This is Headbangers. And this is me. This is Leah, Sky, Callum, Jen, Sky, Sky again, and finally, Sky. Sky is our boss. She runs the show. And this is our team, Leask Studios, and we are embarking on a challenge to develop and release a crazy family-friendly game for PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. Welcome to our first devlog. As a family with 3 competitive brothers and equally competitive partners, we have regular games nights where we play a variety of games, and these include the likes of Boomerang Fu on the Switch and Gang Beasts on the Xbox. Our first ideas revolved around food. We thought about having each player select a type of food as their character, but as Leah began work on the concept art for this, we wrestled with the game concept itself to get an idea which would work. We eventually did a complete U-turn on the idea and thought it might be easier to come back to it later, which turned out true. With no clue what we're doing or any idea what the game was going to be, the only logical thing to do next was start. We started by setting up version control, which any major project like this needs. We could already picture ourselves losing months of work down the line, so we got onto GitHub and created a repository to back up our work. Next, we created our Unity project. And with little knowledge on ragdolls to start with, I had to do my research and found this great video which got me started. With little idea of what the character would look like, I started using cube placeholders for each bone and setting up the rough character shape. Once I had all this in place, it worked. Well, not really. There were still a few more steps to follow before the character would actually stop jiggling around. Great, now that works. Next I added some basic player movement with simple player inputs which I got working first time. No issues at all, none whatsoever. I changed around the character shape into cubes, and this is where you begin to see the character take shape. Next, I added the limb replicator script in order to add the animations. The way a ragdoll works is that there is a duplicate character in the world that does all the animations, while the character you see is controlled by physics. The ragdoll character applies the animations from the duplicate character to itself to combine both physics and the animations. Now for some reason the character is adamant about crawling everywhere. The knees seemed to buckle under the weight whenever they tried to move. It took a lot of tweaking to get them walking normally, but it turns out they only needed to lose a few pounds. We also added a couple animations like jumping and kicking to be used in the game. We now begin to see the character form into something at least half usable, so now it's time to test out multiplayer. So we grabbed a couple of Xbox controllers and plugged them into my laptop. We figured out how to separate the inputs into multiple controllers, and there we go. The basics are working. Now apparently there's this new input system or something, so we should probably implement that. Especially with about 50 inputs in the input manager, but future me will deal with that. It works for now. We created a player health script to track when players will get knocked out from a headbutt or kick. Now for some sound effects. Using freesounds.org, we sourced some sound effects to use in the game for headbutting. I added this into the game and it sounded great. After sorting out that problem, the character can now kick and headbutt. After some approval from the boss on the progress so far, she gave us the go-ahead to add in some object interaction, so now we can headbutt or kick objects in the scene for more interactability. With basic functionality in place, it was time to give the characters some personality. So Leah got to work making some cute faces. One thing we really wanted was the ability for the characters to change emotion based on their actions and surroundings, so we did just that. It took a lot of tweaking to get the character looking cute rather than creepy, but we got there in the end, I think. We created a script to handle the inputs and outputs of the character emotions. When the character headbutts, they get angry, and if they get hit, it makes them sad. One downside to giving them emotions though is they always seem to be in a bad mood now. One thing we don't like when playing games is having nothing to do when you're out. To resolve this, we made the player turn into a ghost when they fall off. To add a twist to the game, we decided to have ghosts still be able to push objects around in the scene, just not the players, so this way they could indirectly affect the game. This has a lot of potential in the future for some interesting mechanics. Now it's time to add in the camera that can follow multiple players. This works by locking onto all the players in the scene and finding their average position. Now that we've built up enough courage to face it, it's time to implement the new input system. We created an empty scene just to get a simple player controller working, and after doing this we did the same with the main character, and this actually went a lot smoother than we hoped for. Now, for a bit of background, I'm not that experienced with programming, so hence why some of the horrific looking code you may have seen so far. When it came to the more complex things such as the lobby and player data, it was Callum's time to shine. He started by controlling how players joined the game. He then added in the ability for players to pick their colour, and this got very complex and required a lot of bug fixing, especially when it came to players joining and leaving. Leah started work on a proper character model to replace the cube placeholders we had so far, as well as some feet of course. Once they were ready, we implemented them into the game. Now the final thing for the lobby was a ready up function, which Callum added. Now it was time to focus on some level design, so we started by making a placeholder level purely just for testing out the game. We tried out various materials and art styles for the game, but struggled to find the right fit. I imported ProBuilder into the project and began experimenting with shapes. Ultimately, we decided on basic colours for the environment rather than materials. We thought this fit the theme of a simple family-friendly game anyway. We also experimented with skyboxes as well as daytime and nighttime lighting. So at this point we had set a date for our first official testing of the game with our whole family. We added some temporary controls at the bottom of the screen to help them out. And at this point we all had a realisation. With characters that headbutt, why not have a music themed game where the characters are headbanging to music? And so I quickly got to work developing a basic soundtrack for the game. With everything coming together for our final test, it was time to port the game to Xbox. So we signed up to the Xbox developer program and put our Xbox into dev mode. Now this took quite a while to load, so in the meantime, the boss was demanding some attention. To further add to the theme of our game, and as a final last touch, we added some headphones to the character. Once everything was working, we were ready to test. So that was the first time that our family played the game together, and it was honestly so much fun to play, and we could tell that we were on something special with this game idea. The game was just what we were picturing. While coming up with a game idea, we were picturing a family gathered around a TV laughing and having fun while playing our game. And we really got a sense of that while all of our family were sitting around the TV testing the game together. We also made a short teaser trailer for Headbangers, and here it is. Thank you for watching, and we really appreciate all your support, so be sure to subscribe to see more Headbangers development, and Sky of course.